You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello, this is Alex here for a solo podcast. We are going to be talking about diets and why we believe they're only about 15% of the overall health picture. But before I do that, I wanted to tell you guys about our exciting sponsor for the podcast episode today. Now, we have had them as sponsors before, and Megan and I did an entire oral health episode. And so if you haven't listened to that, check that out. There's lots more about them there. However, the deal with our sponsors today is that they are a company called Risewell. They are a holistic dental company that provides solutions for non-toxic but effective products for oral health, which I personally really love because I have done the, charcoal and coconut oil homemade toothpaste, and I've done everything, over to the other side with conventional toothpaste. And as with everything, if you've been here a while, you know that Megan and I tend to fall out somewhere in the middle. We love the sweet spot. We love the approach where both kind of conventional and functional medicine can meet and all work together. And I think Risewell as a company knocks that out of the park. And so the deal with their effectiveness is that they use hydroxyapatite. It's a naturally occurring mineral that makes up about 97% of our tooth enamel. And so this company, I'll tell you a little bit more in a second, but this company and all over the world, especially in places like Japan, they have studied this extensively, and the data suggests that hydroxyapatite is phenomenal for strengthening and protecting teeth without the use of fluoride. So if that's something that you've always taken into consideration, Risewell is an amazing thing for that. So hydroxyapatite, even though it's not used as commonly in the US yet, I do believe that is going to change, but all over the world, it is being used as a protective and strengthening tool for oral health. And if you have listened to that previous podcast, you know how much oral health actually feeds into our hormones, our neurotransmitter, our microflora, our gut health. All of those things start at the mouth as well. And so this is an exciting new area that I think Risewell is essentially pioneering in the United States. It's also cool that company was started by a dentist, and they decided to take it up a notch in terms of the scientific backing of this company. And they decided to put together a scientific council composed of leading dentists and even some doctors in the United States. And so this council is intended to make sure that the products that they are creating are truly functionally working for people and helping them with their oral health. So all in all, this is why we've chosen to partner with Risewell. Megan and I both use the products. They have a toothpaste. What's cool about the products is that they're very similar to what you would normally use. And so when it comes to switching from something conventional to something that's more holistic and less toxic, this can be a really great stepping stone for that because they have mouthwash, they have floss, they have toothpaste that comes in a similar tube as always. It's not a powder. So all of that makes it really easy to use and really sustainable in the long run. And they do have, you can essentially re-up kits like that just get sent to your house. So Risewell, they are our sponsors today. Check them out. We absolutely love them. So with that, let's go on to the episode. So today, what I'm talking about is diets. Okay, so diets are something that people come to us and ask questions a lot because of what generally happens is that people have written blog posts like, here's 10 foods that are good for PCOS, or here's what to eat if you have endo, or here's the perfect plan, or here's the perfect food if you have insulin resistance. That is all super helpful. And obviously, as content creators, we give people tools that they can get started. However, you'll notice in our stuff, food is only a small portion of all of the things that we talk about, because really, when we look at overall health, this is what Megan and I believe. Megan and I believe that health is made up out of multiple systems and aspects of your beingness that are all coming to create the existence and the experience that is you and your health right now. While food is very powerful in making us feel certain ways, setting us up for good health or poor health, either way works, right? Depending on what we're doing, there is still a lot more to you as a person than what goes in your mouth. Therefore, there's a lot more of that goes into your health than just what goes in your mouth. And so when we talk about overall categories for healing from hormonal problems, neurotransmitter imbalances, things like PCOS, endo, PMDD, fatigue, acne, weight loss resistance, headaches, all the things that you're here for, then what we're talking about is food is about 15% of that picture. Then there are things like sleep and supplements that you're using that are either addressing root cause or are replacing things. There is the category of what happens between your ears, which, let me tell you, we believe makes up at least 25% of the pie. So between the things that we think and the things that we believe about ourselves and our health, if that's 25%, but we are spending all our time on food and we're thinking about our food, we're planning about our food, we are stressing about our food, we're always second guessing what our food is, you can see how using up that 25% to worry and stress just to get that 15% right is a losing, I'm using quotes, proposition, in that you're sacrificing a bigger slice of the pie just to get a smaller slice right. Unfortunately, that is what's kind of encouraged. And so Megan and I have been there. Absolutely. I used to stress about my food all the time, but I also had a history of eating disorders and then orthorexia around health, like the SIBO diets and the low FODMAP diets, and all of that caused a worsening of my eating disorder stuff. And I know Megan feels the same way, even though she's not here to share her story today. But essentially, when we talk about these groups, so let me keep going. I got a little sidetracked with the brain stuff, but it is so, that I think illustrates the scenario of what's actually happening even better, in that these pie slices need to be appropriately balanced and the appropriate amount of attention given to each one, right? So then there are things like our relationships and our ability to connect and feel connected and involved in others in a meaningful way. Right. There is happiness with our job, our relationships, like our love relationships, right? Are we living out our purpose in the world? All of these things get exponentially bigger and bigger as we go out. And to focus on food as this tiny slice at the expense of all these other things, if we are staying in a job that we hate so that we can pay the bills, so that we can buy the perfect food, it really does behoove us to stop and think, is that truly what I believe is most important in my life? Will I continue to do this food stuff at the expense of my higher purpose, my higher way of being that I actually want to step into, because I think when our health is really poor, it's really easy to think, okay, I'm going to arrive at good health and then I won't have to think about it anymore, and then I'll change my career, and then I'll live out my purpose, and then I'll get out of this relationship, and then and the deal is that is switching the order in which everything else happens in your life. So things like food and lifestyle tools like detox stuff, if we spend all our energy focusing on that at the expense of the bigger picture of our lives, it's putting the cart before the horse, in that the way that you think about your life in terms of what's most important to me and where am I going, if that isn't figured out, then when our actions and the way that we feel about what we're doing are always a direct response to those beliefs that we hold. And so for that reason, a lot of people find that they're trying to do the perfect things for their food. They're trying to do sleep the perfect way. They're trying to do all of the detox tools and elixirs and teas. However, a lot of times people are like, yeah, I go in fits and starts because I do it for a little while, then I get off track. Well, that experience of getting off track, not following through, not being able to sustain that stuff is a direct consequence of possibly not being in alignment in a much bigger way in your life. And that's why the follow through and the sustainability isn't solid. What happens when we switch that and say, is my life working for me? Then the food choices that we make, the lifestyle choices that we make, the sleep changes that we make, those are all then congruent with who we are, and the follow through and the ability to really stay on track is then vastly improved. It becomes a lot easier to do that kind of stuff when we are happy, content, solid in our relationships. All of these things still need to be considered. Now, some of you at this point might be like, oh, so I should just go off the rails, do whatever I want with my food. It's not that big of a deal. Now, there is a balance to this in that if food is 15% of the equation, doing an 80-20 approach to your food where 80% of it is dialed in and 20% you have to play with and eat the things that you want, as long as, it's not detracting from the way that you feel, then in that case, that's like going from 15% down to 12%. Okay, so if the rest of the stuff is dialed in, that's like a 97% overall, right? So that is a great way to go. We don't want to drop that 15% down to 1% and just eat candy all day long just because we feel like it. Because yes, once you take away 14% of that, it is going to have an impact for your health. So let's not get it too twisted in saying that food doesn't matter. Food is medicine. Food is powerful. Food sets us up for a lot of things. Food powers up our biochemical reactions in the form of nutrient density. But all of that is very different than being like, I'm going to drop whole portions of food choices out of me just because I read that blog post that told me it's bad for endometriosis. That is the kind of thing that really is an external source telling you what to think, feel, and experience about your food. What we are saying is we really want to flip it and make sure that when we're reading stuff like that, when we're listening to things like podcasts and other people's opinions, we do still want to bring it back to, how does this feel to me? How do I think this fits into my life? How does this fit into how I view myself and what I know about what has happened in the past? For example, things like eating disorders for Megan and I have always played into the way that we approach our food, because anytime that we go into deprivation mode, oh my gosh, it kicks all sorts of things up and we get really frantic around food. And so that all needs to happen that's an inside out thing, right? That's knowing yourself and understanding you from a deep level that says, I'm going to pursue information. I'm going to look at information, but I will always be deciding it from a place of internal power, internal commitment to what I'm doing or not doing. And if something does not feel right or good for you, then it doesn't matter what external source is going to be telling you. Now, it is, I will say, this brings up a lot of fear for people because they go, well, I don't trust myself, therefore I need to listen to everyone else around this. In the beginning, that's how it feels. But as we step into our power more, and that is related to what we think about ourselves, right? What's happening between the ears? Are we living out our purpose? Do we like our job? Do we like the people in our life? All of those things, when they're not on track, leak our personal power. And when we don't have the personal power to back up, does this feel true for me? Does this actually work? Am I connected to my intuition enough to make that call? That's where people feel very powerless and scared to start to make their own decisions. So all of this that I'm talking about that sort of de-emphasizes the obsession around food and focuses on stepping into your power as a true aligned human being will then make all of these decisions, all of these details, all of these next little steps of what are you going to eat today much, much easier. Okay? So generally speaking, that is worth sitting down with. I know I've thrown a lot at you here at a short period of time. I would highly recommend sitting down with either a journal or with, getting ready to tap, maybe writing yourself some scripts. And if you're new to tapping, just go to zestyginger.com/tapping and we have a free mini course on it. But essentially, going through and processing some of what we're talking about. So if you are creating your own pie, how do you place things? Is your supplement and your food pie 80%? Or the slices, are they 80% of your pie? Is that all you have going on now? Okay, if that's the case, cool. How can we bring in more awareness and alignment into what's happening between your two ears? Are we addressing getting into parasympathetic mode, which is our rest, digest, and heal mode, which is so crucial for this healing work that we do on the body? Just go look at where are your pie slices currently and how are they falling out, and do they align with this bigger picture of who are you and what are all the components of your life that make up your daily experience. So I highly, highly encourage you, create that visual for yourself, and then in whatever way that works for you, whether you talk it out with someone, whether you journal on it, whether you tap through it, whether you do EMDR, whatever it is that you do to process emotions, breath work, hypnosis, whatever way that you do that, to be able to sit with this question and say, how do I want to make my pie slices look? What do I think is important to me? And how much am I willing to devote to any one area? And so with my story, I will say I used to spend, when I was in residency, early on, this was probably like intern year after I had finished medical school, this is when I was most on top of my food. And this is when I was really kind of going through this realization of high quality whole food as close to the ground as possible and nutrient density. This is where we developed all of our nutrient density and breaking up the food plate content, right? So when I went through that, it definitely served a purpose at the time. And if you're realizing through this episode that you've been hyper focused on food and you're feeling bad about it, don't. It's nothing to feel bad about. It's just seasons of our life. But then once we've lived through one and it has served its purpose, it's time to go on to the next thing. We don't want to get stuck somewhere. And so when I was going through all of that, I would make 3 meals a day for my husband and I. I would be spending hours in the kitchen on top of working, like 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And I was so incredibly stressed out over it. Like I wanted to hyper focus on, oh, I can't eat that food. Oh, I'm rebuilding my gut, so I really need to get this in. And I always need to have bone broth going. And like I said, it does have benefits to look at your food and spend the time to do that kind of stuff. However, there gets a point where then it's a point of diminishing return, essentially. You start to get lower and lower results from the food because I wasn't sleeping as much. I was really stressed out. I was not in parasympathetic mode. I lived in sympathetic mode for the vast majority of those years back then. And I was always, what was happening between my two ears was not what I'm talking about today. It was literally just a laundry list of check marks that I had to get done so that I met the external requirements of what I had learned to do. We did Chris Kresser courses, we did all this learning, and I was still going along externally, listen to anything and everybody. And what happened was that then what was happening between my ears wasn't even mine. It was everyone else's voices of what I should be doing. And so at that time, it was a huge aha to kind of look at what was happening in the franticness of my thoughts and the way that I was behaving. Like I would literally yell at my husband over like, oh, you didn't go to the store when I wanted, now I don't have this thing to make this thing, and now it's a disaster. And like I would have a meltdown over it. When really, in the grand scheme of things, that's the stuff that was holding me back much more than, oh, I didn't have the sweet potatoes for this food that I was going to make. That never would have made a huge difference. Maybe like transiently for a day, it would have done something, but it's not the same as what I was doing day in and day out by the things I was choosing to hyper focus on. And more importantly, in doing that, I was not able to focus on being my aligned self. I was still at that time trying to be everything to everyone and put out this external front, almost, not in a way that was intentional, but it was like I had to look perfect because I was out in the world talking about health. And so I was still holding myself to that level where it was an externally driven goal instead of actually being like, what does Alex want? What feels good to Alex? What makes my heart sing? And what makes me feel aligned and purposeful and just who I truly am, surrounded by the people I want to be surrounded by, doing the things I want to be doing. And so once that shift happened, my food, now I will say I swung a little bit in the other direction just because I had been a little too hyper focused. That was just my story. It's not necessary to swing the other way. I'm just being transparent about what happened. And I kind of said, all right, I'm going to put that down for a second and just make sure that I spend some time focusing on other aspects of my life. But really, what I wish I would have done, and if I could go back and do it again, then what I would say is I would slowly back out of that, as in just on the daily say, which food choices am I making that I have been making that have been working for me, but how can I modify them in a way that makes things easier and more aligned with me? So if you heard batch cooking is the way to go, and that makes your Sundays hell every single week, and you want to try a different way where you do 3 smaller sessions or something, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Or if you're like, I cut that food group out way long ago, I haven't even re-challenged it recently, maybe that's the little shift that you make. So I would no longer go kind of swing back and forth like I did. If it were me doing it again, I would really just say, one choice at a time, one day at a time, how can I treat myself and how can I come at myself in a more compassionate, gentle way that is not powering through and forcing anything that's going to happen for my health or in my life. that gentleness and compassion, I hope, once you start with food, it really expands over to gentleness and compassion with our sleep and the way we behave and our emotions and our ability to sit with our emotions. We treat ourselves so much worse often than we treat the people around ourselves in our life. And so for that reason, we want to start bringing it to ourselves first and foremost, because we can't hold that space for anyone else when we don't even have gentleness and compassion for ourselves, right? We can act like we have gentleness and compassion for others, but until we apply it to ourselves, it is always going to be partially inauthentic because it's a front, right? You're doing it for someone else, but it doesn't include you, so it's not actually who you are. And it's not an intentional front, but that's really how it goes. So today, I know I've left you with some homework. So take a look at your slices in your health. What are the slices to you? I gave you some of our categories. And then what proportion of the slices make up your life right now? And what would you like them intentionally to look like? And then lastly, once you've done that, each day it's a question of, how can I do the things that have been working for me currently while still continuing to explore today? How can I treat myself with more kindness and compassion and gentleness around getting all of this done in a way that feels good and aligned with me? Okay, so that's your homework for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Thank you so much for all the reviews that you've been leaving. We are just so grateful for each and every one of you that shares our podcast, posts it on social media, leaves us reviews, because our goal is to change how people are treated in medicine and how women are treated in medicine. And so the more we can get this word out that there's more to the story, right? There's more options for people than ever. We just so appreciate it, and we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Okay, that's it for today, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.